Six Nations 2022, folks, is well and truly done and dusted, but you know me, I can't help myself from having a wee dig through some of the stats. We're going to have a look at Italy's campaign to start off with, or in all likelihood go through all the six teams from the competition. We're going to have a look at how did their results compare to last year. We're going to have a look at how did some of their stats compare to last year. You guys know I'm a stats guy. I do think you need to kind of take stats with a bit of caution. I wouldn't say full grain of salt. I know some people don't like stats at all. I do think there is value in them. But we'll have a look compared to last year, and then we'll kind of give a verdict on where the Italians are at. Are they tracking in the right direction? That kind of thing. The most obvious positive sign for the Italians is the fact that their record this year was 1-4, 1 win, 4 losses, compared to 0-5, which they've had for countless, not quite countless, but they've had for many years, since like 2015. So the fact that they got a win is probably already exceeding expectations if we get into the verdict, but we'll get to that in just a second. So they finished with 4 points, and pretty much every year prior has been none. I mean, that being said, they still finished last, so their position is the same as it was last year and the year before and the year before. But I think most of us would say it's a much better last than every other last they've had for all those years when they were winless. I think we can probably all get on board with that one. Stats-wise, when we're looking at just kind of the table, how many points did they score this year? How many points did they score last year? 60 points this year, 55 last year. It's pretty similar. There's not that much difference. They actually scored one more try last year than they scored this year. They didn't really go. I think they scored a try in every game they played in the 2021 season. So you might look at that with a degree of caution, but I do think the main difference from where we're seeing the improvement with the Italians, it's only 1 year on 1 year, which is not a huge sample, but with Kieran Crowley taking over, is he did what he said in terms of he wanted to tighten up the defense. The fact that they got a win, I think, is like a cherry on the top. He basically went into this campaign saying, I want to tighten up the defense. Now, still, did they lose 5 games? Did they concede a lot of points? Yes, but it wasn't as bad as last year. Last year, they conceded 34 tries. This year, 27. That's a pretty big decrease. And conceded points last year, 239. This year, 181. So again, the amount of points that they shipped is markedly down. The difference last year was 184 in the negative. This year was 121. So that's a step in the right direction. That's the kind of obvious stuff. But what about the stuff on the field? Were the Italians more effective defensively, just in terms of the kind of key defensive stats that we like to look at? The simple answer is yes. Their tackling percentage went up. Last Six Nations, 83%. This year, they're up to 87.5%. That's not a huge increase, but I look at the stats for virtually every game that I watch, and I can tell you, if you're at 90, you're doing really well. If you're at 85, you're doing okay, and if you're at 80, you're kind of on the low side. It's only like a few percent difference. 5% can take you from being a really good shift to kind of being just okay. So to go from 83 is kind of well on the low side, especially for Test rugby, to being 87, which is kind of that midpoint between average and good, shows a marked increase for the Italians for mine. Likewise, one that's often a killer for sides. I haven't done the direct correlation between it yet, but I know there must be one. I just haven't figured out a way to quite have a look at it yet. But clean breaks conceded generally means you were getting flogged. Not always, but if you concede a heap of clean breaks, you concede a lot of tries. That just tends to be the way the game works. So clean breaks conceded in 2021, they were averaging 13. If we look at this year, 8.8. 8.8, so it's not quite half, but it's a significant drop from last year. So clean breaks conceded, I think that's a key reason they didn't ship quite as many points. I just had to pause. The weirdest thing, my neighbor just moved her car in front of my place, and she never ever comes and shows her face or says hello. So bizarre. She's getting some trees. tended to, and she doesn't want the leaves falling on her car, I guess. So she just parked in front of my place. What were we saying? Penalties conceded. The discipline is way better than it was last year. Averaging more than 13 penalties conceded a game last year, less than 10 this year. Yellow cards, 7 in the previous tournament, just the 1 in this tournament. So, I don't know, man. Keeping 15 guys on the field is a good way to continue to make your tackles, to concede fewer clean breaks. Interestingly, though, they did concede more run meters. I think that relates to them having generally less possession. The Italians this tournament actually played with less possession than they did last year under Franco Smith. So they're having to do more defending. So this is what I mean about, you got to be a little bit wary with your stats, but I do feel like there's enough kind of obvious ones that put some ticks in the right boxes. What about ball in hand, though? It's not just about defensive stuff. They averaged 325 run meters in the last tournament. That's up to 345, so it's like a 20-meter increase. But remember, we're talking with less ball. The Italians this year played with less ball, so their carrying effectiveness is increased. 2.9 meters a carry last year, 3.6 meters a carry this year. So it's up. It's not quite a full meter up, but it's getting near that magic 4. And they reckon 4 is kind of the good indication that your team is, I don't know, on the right track. If you're carrying at only like 2 meters a carry, it just generally indicates your attack's not very effective. So 3.6 up from 2.9. More run meters from fewer carries. The attack just looks a bit sharper. They're also passing fewer times, they're carrying fewer times, but remember with less possession that makes sense, but they're getting more run meters. So you're doing more with less under Crowley than under Smith. That's kind of my take from it. So, I mean, what does that leave us with the Italians in terms of the verdicts? I reckon, like if you were looking at meets expectations, exceeds expectations, falls short of expectations, I would say easily exceeds expectations. Nobody expected them to get a win. They were just expected to be more competitive and especially to concede fewer points. They certainly conceded fewer points. Their attack looked sharper and they even managed to bloody win. So, yeah, sorry if that's a bit of stats overload, folks. You guys know I like my stats. Be cautious with stats as always, but I do think what we've seen there certainly tells a story from what we've seen with the Italians in 2022. You guys let me know your thoughts. We'll look at some of the teams in the Six Nations soon, and yeah, we'll see how we go. Take care, guys.